Welcome to another episode of Salesforce Trails and Trials, where we help you accelerate your career and turn soft skills into hard money by mining gold from project failures, bringing insights from ecosystem experts and inspiration from others on the trail. Now joining us with over 20 years in the ecosystem, please welcome our host, John Klein.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Salesforce Trails and Trials. We're excited to walk through another Trailblazer story today with Pranay Joshi, and we appreciate you being with us. Please feel free, click that subscribe button. We'd love to keep you along as we have lots of great stuff this year for you. And today we're going to talk about some great things about AI, some great ways that you can follow his example of kind of learning, being a curious person, and making career kind of pivots and looking at new and creative ways to help people. So welcome, Pranay.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. As we start out here, I'd love to just hear, I always like to go back and start with where people began. You know, when you think about, usually there's some point in your life where you find out, I'm going to be that like hands-on person, you know, maybe be in the river, guiding people in the raft, or, you know, I'm going to be something else, or I'm going to be like a tech person. I love, you know, being in front of a computer. I love the curiosity, all that. I'm curious, where did you first see that kind of difference for you in your life?
Yeah, so I guess if I were to like go really back, I was always very curious of how things work. And the first instance I remember, which I got in trouble for, is that my parents bought me this like fake little plane. And it would like it wouldn't fly, but it would like, move and it would make all the plane sounds and stuff. And I was so curious. I was probably like five or six, I can't remember. But I kind of like took it apart and I'm like looking at each component. Oh, this thing makes this sound and like where the batteries go. And it was brand new toy. And my parents were like, what did you do? Like, just you took it apart. And in my mind, I can just like put it back together. And then when you fast forward, I'm in like in grade 12, I was on the medical science side of things. My parents wanted to become a doctor. And so I'm like, studying medical science. So we do this like dissection, which I think not now it's not done in schools in India, but at the time you would dissect a rat. And
Okay.
so I was like so precise because I thought I will dissect it and I'll put it back together. And so
Ah,
I'm like, I did the best job, like, precisely, like not a single drop of blood anywhere in the petri dish. And after the whole thing is done, I'm like, okay, now how do we put it back together? And the teacher goes, oh, these rats are dead. So I've always been like very curious of how things work, taking things apart, putting them back together. And so that kind of thread like kept going through my life and career. And it just so happens computers wasn't the thing. Like I probably didn't have a computer till I was in second year of college.
wow.
So I got into engineering as a mechanical engineer, studied 1 year of mechanical engineering, but then I got this like small part of mechanical engineering was you would learn CAD CAM.
Hmm.
And so I went to this computer lab for the first time and I'm using it and that was it. Like I just stopped going to every other class and I would skip school, I would skip class. We had a little computer lab that you could go to at night. And so I would, go from my hostel and then go into there and like learn C programming on my own. And then I was like, okay, I need to change streams. So I graduated as a computer science engineer. So it's a funny thing how, like, just curiosity and computer science, I think the reason I gravitated towards it was the first time you could make n number of mistakes without breaking anything. I could just write a piece of code. If it fails, don't worry, do it again.
Mhm.
And it was like this zero cost of breaking things, which kind of like really made me like get into it and I still love programming to this day. I code
Nice.
every
Did you ever bring a sleeping bag to the computer lab in the evening?
no time to sleep. Even now, like there are times when I'm like so into something, like I look up in the middle of the night and it's like 4 a.m. and okay, I better like have a couple hours sleep before I go to work. Yeah.
Wow, it's actually funny because when I was in, I also got a computer. I mean, when I was 12 years old, one of my neighbors, he had a Commodore 64. I'm dating myself now, but and always thought I was very curious about it. And he saw that, and so he had a little Timex Sinclair 1000. It's a little
Oh,
black. You would hook it up to your television, and you could program like a game or something, and then play the game.
okay.
And so that was my
Yeah.
first time really having a computer, but nothing stuck. And it wasn't really until I worked at a computer lab at the junior college I was going to here in Pasadena.
Nice.
And I was the 28th person out of 28 people hired. So I had the craziest hours, like 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., right? So I'd like stroll into class at 8 a.m. after working from 3 a.m. But it gave me a ton of time to learn. And they had Mac
Right.
and Windows there.
Nice.
And I learned a bit of Unix as well. So that was my really recognition and realization that, oh,
Yeah.
I have a knack for this. It kind of just thinks like I do. I didn't expect that because I'm a people person. And you also are a very good communicator. And so it's sometimes people think, oh, it's just the nerdy people who are into code and such. And so I'm glad that you're another example that that's not the case.
No, I think the way I see it is like two types of people get attracted is either builders or people who just love solving problems.
Hmm.
So and I like both things, and so like computer science is something that I recommend. For the longest time, it was like it should just be part of like math science, in school. It just should be like programming as one of those things that you learn
Yeah.
as a second
Like reading.
language.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important. And, accounting, we should know
Yeah.
how money works, right? That's good. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to just as you kind of walk this journey, right? You're programming in C, you're loving being able to break things without, having any significant dilemmas. That's good. And so help me understand how you discovered Salesforce. How did you get into the Salesforce world?
Yeah, so like like most people, you define your life by the changes that you made. And the most fulfilling lives are the ones that had a lot of changes in them
Hmm.
because that's how you count like how much you have lived instead
Hmm.
of just like existed. And so um like I said, I was going into medical science, but then went into going into mechanical engineering, but went into computer science. And so another thing that happened after coming out of college was I got into this really good company that was building banking software. And so the way things were built in that day was you had this like waterfall model of software development where requirements were written like 5 years ago, and today I'm writing code for it. And so there was like almost zero creativity required to do coding.
Hmm.
And I really felt kind of like boxed into this like engineer role. And so I thought I need to be creative and this is not for me. And so I decided to quit and went into applying for MBA and got into Schulich School of Business, which is here in Canada. So I came here, did my schooling, and I knew I was going to go into marketing. And so that's when I got into marketing in a company in Brampton out here. And part of the like as I'm doing my marketing manager things like getting translations done, all of that stuff. But we were a Salesforce.com, like one of the early adopters as a small company. And so this is time like way before like even I want to say like even before Visual Force. So
Hmm.
like the only code you could write was the Apex code.
Or S controls?
And
You write any S controls?
yeah, exactly. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So just that my programming again, like that curiosity, I'm like, oh, so you can build a little bit of page over here, or like you can write a little bit of logic other than the point and click,
Hmm.
what was available. So within like, I think 6 months, we fired the consulting team that we had, and I started taking over everything that was within the company. So I was with the company for 6 years, and through that, we implemented every new feature Salesforce ever launched. And so kind of like, and I never took any certifications because you're just, doing your work. So when I decided to leave that company, I was like, oh, before I go out, I need to tell people, hey, I know Salesforce. So I think it was October till November. I did 6 Salesforce certifications back to back and cleared all of them because of all the, practice that I've
Yeah.
been doing, like
They just
learning on the
validated
job.
the knowledge and experience that you already had. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, that was super rewarding. And one of the things I really like about Salesforce is how easy they make it for someone to learn it. And I compare it and contrast it with things like SAP, which my wife is a consultant for. Like they've made it so hard for someone to learn SAP. And as someone who loves learning, like I just find it like really crazy that a product like that can exist where you add all these barriers for people to just learn your tool. And so like super grateful how Salesforce kind of took a totally a 180-degree approach to
Mm.
existing sales like other types of software out
Yeah,
there.
and making it very accessible, not only the learning process, but from the beginning of creating a front end product like everybody has or attempted to have, but also creating essentially a secondary back end product because the admin area itself is not just,
Yeah.
exposing what Salesforce uses to customize their software, but really creates a
Mhm.
totally unique product that is for making not only knowledge about it accessible, but the actual
Mhm.
manipulation and customization. And yeah, that is really a revolution.
Yeah, I was always like such a huge evangelist of Salesforce, especially because within that company, it was Danimark. We not only used it for sales, which is why we got it in the beginning. But because we had the enterprise license, we could kind of create custom objects and started. So I think the next thing was we brought in service. Then we had a warehouse, so we brought in some of the inventory management. Then I hooked it up to our inventory management system, so the sales numbers and the SKUs, like all of those would get synced on a nightly basis. For that, I wrote some like .NET kind of plugin, and that's when I discovered like the API capabilities of Salesforce. And so it was just like mind blowing, like how much you could do with a platform. And then like at some point, I was like, maybe we should create like a little HR system within Salesforce and like start doing like performance reviews and stuff like that within Salesforce as well. And so it's just incredible, like when you build such a strong like platform layer, what like users and companies can use it for. And so I always felt one of the biggest mistakes they made was call it Salesforce. It should have like if the name was different, people would be using it for a lot more other things than just
Mm.
sales and marketing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like enable force, you know?
Yeah, something. They had, I think they own force.com. So it was like
Yeah,
just may the force be with you.
exactly. But maybe there were some discussions with like George Lucas and may the
Yeah.
force.com be with you. Who knows?
Yeah.
Wow. So what a great opportunity to kind of learn on the fly, right? To be just put into a pool of problems
Right.
and that you displaced the consultant team.
Yeah.
So well done there. I remember when I was working at the same lab, GE Capital was in there doing all of
Mhm.
the computer maintenance and such. And I also
Okay.
took that over and it felt great, although I wished I was paid like GE Capital.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was still
Yeah.
fun to think like, wow, I guess I'm becoming reliable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
validating.
oftentimes, like I feel as someone who just loves learning and working hard, it's like, people like us, we just do it because we want to do it. Like it's not like we knew that if we do this, then like next thing will happen, and then next thing will happen, and then I'm gonna be this or that. It's just we just love doing it, and then we're in a world where it's appreciated, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. So to this point in time, I'm curious, right? So you're at this business for 6 years in Brampton. What would you say is kind of the key lesson that you learned up to that date, right? You got your 6 certs, which was great. You passed them all the first time because you took them in arrears, which is nice. I'm just curious, thinking back, what was a great kind of lesson learned that you can share up to that point in your life?
Yeah, like I always tell people, there like in everyone's almost career that there comes times when something brand new is happening in the industry. And Salesforce was this move towards like cloud software for enterprise use. And if you can immerse yourself and just learn as much as you can about it, it can carry you through for for your next 5 to 6 years of your career, and then you'll have another kind of breakthrough in the industry. And like just keep your ears and eyes open of when things are drastically changing. I live in tech, so I can speak to tech, but I'm sure that happens in like a lot of other fields as well. And so, um, you know, there will be cases when, especially when you work for bigger companies, that you're put in a silo and you're like, hey, you're a marketing manager, just focus on marketing. But then you can, if you're curious and if you want to work hard, you can always find excuses like I did. I didn't just do marketing. I started working with the service team. I didn't just do that. I started working with the warehouse team. Didn't just do that. I started working with the with our like vendors who worked, and we created like this portal in Salesforce, like communities. This is before communities. I think they had partner portal and one other thing, customer portal. So when you start working in different parts of your company, you will learn so much, and like just have this one layer where you can apply it to across. And today, I guess a perfect example is AI. So AI is changing almost everything to do with how work will be done in the future. And so it's the perfect time, no matter what role you're in. Of course, try to apply as much as you can here, but just be curious because it's a step function change on how work will be done in the future. And the way I'm seeing it, at least, is that the boundaries of job roles will either disappear or just become like very irrelevant. People will just move around wherever they're needed because the cost of acquiring a new skill will almost like tend to zero. If I'm like, a smart person, um, and I'm doing marketing today, and you suddenly said, hey, can you help our finance team
Mhm.
because they're kind of bogged down and we have to get this like annual report out. I can just go and help them now because whatever they give me, they tell me here are a few prompts that we are using to help like analyze this data. Can you do that? And I can do that and leverage AI where I don't have expertise. So having that kind of mindset today is like super important and something that has like been that thread throughout my career. I was just always curious. Keep peeking into other departments as much as you can.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And that curiosity drives you to do it really. Sometimes nobody's asking you to do it. There's no immediate reward for you doing it other than the learning. But you
Right.
find out over time. I always think about it like, I like Batman, and he always has all of these amazing contraptions on his belt, you know? And
Right.
you don't know
Yeah.
when you're going to need them, but you
Yeah.
want to acquire them so that you can carry them around so that when you do need the grappling hook, because you got to get out of this situation, it's there and it's ready. And in
Yeah.
fact, many times, if you need the smoke screen, it's for the benefit of other people. That now you
Mhm.
did this work with your own curiosity, and now the payback is that, oh wow, in this conversation, somebody's bringing up a topic about this, and I happen to know something and can provide them something to help, move them forward. I also like what you highlighted, which is this idea of, we certainly talk about kind of cross training or cross pollination inside of an organization. But now it's like we have this companion it reminds me of if you remember the movie The Matrix. When you're in the
Yeah.
Matrix, you have, we're always calling back to HQ and being like, hey, give me
Yeah.
a blueprint of this building, right? Help me understand where the exits are. Where's the power grid in this building? And now all of a sudden it's like it puts a cape on me. That's the way I think about it,
Yeah.
right? Like AI gives me a cape to do something really special in the ways that I'm already willing to work. And it's a
Yeah. Yeah, it's
really
my
good.
favorite movie, and the best scene is when like I think Neo asks like, "Do you know how to fly this helicopter?" And she goes, "Yeah, I do."
Exactly. She's like,
Then
well,
they
give me a
just jump
second.
on the helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little frightening, but I think if you think about it, we still have to interface, we still have to kind of add the prompts, and we still have to,
Yeah.
prompt engineering is so critical. And, uh,
Yeah.
but it's really good feedback as,
I think that's where we're heading towards. Like if you're curious and you're like smart and you're hardworking, like if you have those three things, if ever anyone asks, can you do this? The answer will invariably be yes, because I can figure it out. Like the time it used to take for someone to like give you a task and then for you to like kind of read through the task and then decide, okay, I'll find some time to like do this, is literally the time now that I can totally learn how to do that task and then perform it. So instead of, it's kind of like I feel like companies, and this is something that I'm seeing already. There's an old Deloitte paper on skill-based organizations where you think of your people not as like job roles or people who have, I guess, capabilities, sorry, competencies, but
Yeah.
you look at them as a group of
Skills.
skills.
Yes.
And so if you look at them as group of skills, then you go, okay, here's the product or the project that I want to work on or want someone to work on. Here are the like 20 skills that I need to get this done. And then, like a software could do that matching of like this person has three of them, this person has seven of them, this person has eight of them. And then you like, kind of like form that team together ad hoc, get that project done, and then the team just goes away. It's kind of like how
Like
movies are
Toto.
made.
It's like Toto.
Yeah. Like, a long time ago, I did this, some research on high performing teams, and movies often come as part of that analogy because if you think about it, like the teams that make movies don't always like work together. It's like a movie is made and then they dismantle, and now this guy goes like does animation for a different shop, and then this guy goes to story writing for a different company, and then like another movie comes out, and like there are very different teams. But, like, and that's the kind of like how companies probably will work is you'll just have access to a bunch of people, and then you just say, okay, who's available? Here's what needs to get done. Everyone comes together, gets it done, dismantle, and then go away. And then like I don't know how like we'll figure out how to pay people and like all of that stuff, but I think that's where I would really thrive in an environment like that where I get bored fairly quickly of
Mhm.
doing like the same old thing over and over again.
Mhm.
But if I had the opportunity to just work on different things, I'll be a very happy guy.
Yeah, I'm similar. I love the diversity of the work stream. It's interesting on that front because, AI, one way to think about it is this, it's almost like this, I use the term wise uncle. It's like this, the aggregate experience of like all of those friends who have done that before, which you would normally go to them and be, hey, I need these skills. Like, how did you do this project? How did it work out? What were the pitfalls? What were things that you wish you would have known in the beginning? Now AI enables us to have that across almost any field without
Right,
actually even having a friend. It's like we have a wise uncle in every industry. And I think that's definitely true on the, like the skills, the technical skills, the more tactical side. I think
right,
certainly there's an aspect of there's people first dimensions as it relates to kind of trust, reading between the lines, where you find that certain high performing teams are ones like think about the SEALs. Like the SEALs are in consistent teams. Like you work with the same people because you build this kind of rapport that I'm willing to put my life in your hands. Now, certainly in the professional world, most of us will never have to do that. But there is a sense where sometimes I can delegate something to you, and if you don't do a good job with it, my job could potentially be on the line there. So imagine a manager who's delegating a $300,000 CRM project to a project lead. If that doesn't go well, that manager's job might also be kind of under pressure. And so it seems like there'll be kind of a tension there and some balance between that kind of tactical, like you're talking about the ad hoc team, as
right,
well as elements where we still really need that rapport, the kind of emotional commitment and
right.
the trust that
Yeah.
can only be built really over time with human interaction.
Yeah. Another cool dynamic that's showing up is this idea of every person can be an entrepreneur. And and the way you would look at that is because everyone is good at something, but no one is good at everything. And so generally speaking, people like companies are formed because you want to get a bunch of things done to either sell a widget or deliver on a service. And so in the past, if I'm a carpenter and like I can create like these really interesting tables out there, but I need someone to do like some of the marketing stuff and like someone to come up with like what kind of table designs are popular right now. So I needed like a team around me to kind of help me with these like little like bits and pieces of actually forming a business. So I'm great at the hobby, but I can't convert it into a business. But then soon enough, like people can pick and choose. I'm good at marketing. I just need an AI to maybe do the delivery of some of the tasks that needs to be done for the service. Or I can, hire someone that creates the widget, but I do the marketing part. And then maybe there is like an AI that takes care of the e-commerce website and AI that writes the blog content. And so like I just do the thing that I love doing and hand off everything else to either contractors or AIs. And
Mm,
so this idea of like single person or like couple of co-founders kind of building entire, fairly successful businesses is probably like way more possible now than it was ever before. And it'll get easier and easier. The important thing there would be just knowing what is it that I love doing
mhm.
and don't hand that off to the AI because AI will be able to do everything. It'll be up to us to decide where do I find my value as the most impactful for either my business or the customers, and then let AI kind of help with everything else.
It's
I forget the
fascinating.
name of the product. Like that product literally is all they have is AI employees. Like, and then they're training each kind of persona on marketing, sales, like finance, and like all of those things. And they're still pretty small, but I think, at some point you'll be like, yeah, I'll take three of those and I'll do the rest and form a company for
Well,
my
it's
own.
it's fascinating because that certainly is the trend at this point, right?
Mhm.
Which is thinking, I think I heard, I'm looking up. There's one article on Medium, and I heard this actually a couple months ago as well. It said, at this point, it's conceivable that we will see the first billion-dollar company with under 10 employees,
Right, right.
right? So it's an interesting predicament because you think that's a lot of people who are
Mhm.
maybe not getting hired for that particular company. But to your
Mhm.
point, the exciting part is that a lot of them could go out on their own and figure out how do I add value? What kind of links in the value chain do I want to own? And how can
Mhm.
AI enable me to now go to market in a way that I wouldn't really have been able to do before or not have been as brave to do before?
Right,
So there really is an
right.
opportunity. It's not that all these people are going to just be idle. It's that
Yeah.
it's just, there's always churning inside the economy. I remember back in the day when we were using CRT monitors. I don't know if you know what that is. Do you remember what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are things that people like to put in trash cans and throw hammers into them now because they have a vacuum and so when you break them, they suck all the stuff inside and it's fun.
Yeah.
But back in the day, we used to use those on our desks, all right, for our computer screens. And if you
Right.
think about, there was a whole supply chain behind that, right? All
Mhm.
the glass and the vacuum tubes and all these things.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, TFT monitors came out, and it's a
Yeah.
totally different technology, right? There's no radiation, it's low power, they're lightweight, they're much more durable, the colors are brighter, and now all the light bulb people,
Yeah.
Philips, and all those
Yeah.
people are now the ones who have the best technology related to monitors. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, yeah, it basically shut down a whole
Yeah.
section of the economy related to CRT monitors, but then opened
Yeah.
up a totally new one. And
Yeah.
so, like anything, we just have to make a switch and we have to adjust. And so, going back to, after your 6 years of Salesforce at this particular company, so eventually you found your kind of way navigating. Did you go continue with Salesforce after that? Did you kind of add some additional complementary things to Salesforce? What'd you do then?
Yeah, so that's another one of those. So every company that I've been with, I've spent substantial amount of time, at least from my point of view. But then after Danimark, there was a company that I worked for just for 6 months, and the story goes like this: that you started a company and you go, okay, now I'm the Salesforce expert, and they were like opening up like a branch. It's an American company opening up a branch in Canada for Salesforce consulting. And so the things that they did well was they had connections with Salesforce to get clients. They had the sales team who would do all of that stuff. And then I was part of the delivery team, and it was just me and one other girl. And so both of us are like responsible for all of delivery for Canada. So at some point, I have like about 17 or 18 clients, all with like ranging from, brand new Salesforce installation, like a $5,000 product project where I just need to get it installed and up and going, all the way to like a financial firm where they were getting, I think, um, million records into Salesforce every day.
Mm.
And that's when Wave Analytics kind of came out with Salesforce. So I was implementing that for them. And so like a wide range of like different companies kind of doing different things, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I was working remote. It was the first time I was working remote. Like Denmark used to be going to the office. So now I have like doubled my productivity because I can work from home.
Mm.
Um, but the place where I didn't like it was the fact that when you're working with clients and they pay pretty high, kind of like hourly rate
Mm-hmm.
for a consultant at my level. And so whenever you would come up with like great ideas to implement, they had to like think three times and then go three levels to get an approval to get that done. And so the way I am, like I love to kind of start small and think big. And so oftentimes it was like, oh, this project is going to take like, I don't know, 20 hours, 50 hours or something like that. And then you multiply that. So it became like a bigger, I guess, monetary value than even the project that we were assigned right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the ideas were great. The companies thought they really wanted it. It's just they didn't have the budget. And so it kind of like over and over again, I started getting frustrated where like I would get really deep into this company's operations, try to figure out like how can Salesforce help, but then they didn't have the budget. And so, and then on the flip side, you're always counting your billable hours, like making sure that every minute that you spend, even on learning, like, oh, which project was it for, and then like doing all that stuff. I really didn't enjoy any of that. So 6 months passed by, and I met this company who was a startup, Joist, and I decided to, and they needed someone in Salesforce in-house, so I joined them. So that's when I came out of consulting. And so since then, I decided like I'm never going to go back into consulting ever again, just because of the experience of, how you work with clients.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so funny thing happened that when I joined Joist, um, literally I joined and I think 2 days before they laid off like, I don't know, 70% of their employees. And so I'm about to join, and they call me and say, "Hey, by the way, your role might not be here. Do you want us to talk to your previous company and get your old job back?" I'm like, "No, that's
Oh,
okay.
that's nice of them.
Don't worry about that. I'll figure it out." And so anyway, I take like a month off. I go for a vacation, come back, and the guy calls, "Hey, by the way, are you still in the market? I think we still need someone for Salesforce, and you could join us." And I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'll join for a couple of months as I look for something else." But then I've always wanted to work in a startup. This is a startup. I go, and of course, like we love each other in the first month itself. So then I changed my role from Salesforce architect to an engineering manager. And then so that's where I spent about another 5, 6 years with Joyce, where we went from zero never revenue to profitability, and then selling the company to PE firm in US. So great experience there, but the Salesforce stint was like very short in the beginning.
Mm.
And I kind of got into like other types of engineering soon
Mm-hmm.
after that.
Wow. And did they migrate away from Salesforce, or is that so you had somebody else that on your team take care of it?
They totally changed their business model. So they were thinking of having a sales team. So Joist is a company or a product that helps trade contractors with estimation and invoicing for homeowners who want any kind of work done in their home. And the business model they were trying out was having a sales team that sells the projects to homeowners, and then from our pool of trades contractors, assign them, do the project management part. But then the delivery is directly done by so it was kind of like a marketplace. And so we decided not to go that route. So that's why like part of the sales team was fired as part of that change. And then eventually they totally shifted towards just an app for estimating and invoicing. And we implemented payments and other things. That was like a big departure. So we didn't really need Salesforce anymore. But it was interesting. The reason why I joined them was because they were all software developers working on Salesforce. So they were like butting their heads against things like governor limits,
Hmm.
like all these things that you
Only
feel
two
like,
megs. Yeah, only 2 megs of Apex
yeah,
code.
yeah, you're like, oh yeah, I can build that in a week, and then the developer goes, and then they hit all these like weird issues, because you're working in this like multi-tenant architecture, which as a developer you're not used to because you just own your server.
Sure.
And so it was really fascinating to see like all of the custom things they had built to make this like process work better for a marketplace. Yeah, it was just a shame that we couldn't really leverage it and there was no business model to work on.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my kind of like engineering, business, consulting, and then back into engineering. And so now I'm like in this company writing code every day for 5 years and like kind of like, engineering management and stuff like that. And then I got back into Salesforce when I joined my last company as VP of engineering, which is where this is an agriculture firm that had both operations and a product
Hmm.
engineering. And so I took over IT. So I oversaw IT, and so that's where I kind of got. And the funny thing is, all these years passed by, about 5 or 6. I hadn't touched Salesforce, but everything is like riding a bike. Like everything just comes back to you the moment you open up the platform. Thankfully, not much had changed except for the Lightning experience, which was much more fleshed out. When I started working on Salesforce, it was just starting out. But yeah, building like components in Salesforce was like way more streamlined.
Hmm.
We built this whole like mapping software because agriculture is a lot more, I guess, map focused.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the farm data that we got had to be overlaid on a map, and
Yeah,
Salesforce,
GIS focused. Yep.
yeah, so Salesforce still doesn't have a good map like UI framework. Um, so yeah, we built it from scratch. I hired a really good developer out of India who kind of did the technical work. I did the architectural and kind of like creating POCs. But yeah, it was like again, like it's great working on Salesforce because it takes care of a lot of things.
Hmm.
Like one of the reasons why I decided to go with Salesforce rather than building these things in-house is because this is a small agriculture firm. But we're working with companies like Bayer, Corteva, like these are big names in agriculture. And so when you work with them and they're like, oh, our farmer data will be in your software, we need like this, I don't know, like 10, 20 page long Excel
Hmm.
of like all of the checks and balances you have in your software system to
Yep.
make sure the data can't be leaked. You have like proper controls on who has access. And I'm like, there's no way anyone needs to build it. Salesforce has all of these built in.
Sure.
And when you communicate to someone, yeah, our platform is built on top of Salesforce, you like, you know, 80% of those checkboxes are already checked.
Immediately their confidence goes way up and the
Yeah.
process becomes simpler. Yeah.
Yeah. So that due diligence part like was a breeze after that for our IT team. And yeah, a great decision in hindsight.
Nice. And so now, right, when did you make a decision to kind of pivot out of that engineering role and kind of, think about focusing on, one particular area of change kind of in the marketplace today?
Yeah, so one of the story of um, when AI started coming in, and we were building this small product, which was again in the agriculture space, but the idea of the product was there's a lot of knowledge in agriculture that there's actually a role called an agronomist. So I think of them as like consultants to farmers. And so
Hmm.
these are people who go to school, study all like the, chemical stuff, physical stuff, weather, like all of these things that can impact your farming.
Hmm.
And as a farmer, you just hire them to take care of your farm. And then they come like do audits like once in a while. And then they give you recommendations of what to do. And so these people are like highly skilled and it's kind of like being a consultant for Salesforce. Like you have to do this certification validation every year. You
Hmm.
have certain points like PMP, like you're supposed to take
Yeah,
these courses throughout the
like a
year.
continuing education.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of documentation around that that lives in like, pockets of the company. And so we were building this system where we could upload all of this. and then have like our version of kind of ChatGPT, where it's still backed with OpenAI, but now trained on this body of knowledge that
Is this
we think is the right thing.
the assistant API with your own kind of custom
So
GPT?
this is pre-assistant API. It came out later after I left the company. But so we were building kind of like from scratch all of that stuff. And the the thing that was fascinating was this is brand new stuff. We picked up a new stack, and I picked like three engineers and one designer, and I was acting like product. And so we were building this, and I realized GitHub Copilot had just come out for writing code. And so with GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT, and the fact that we're building an AI product that you can like upload knowledge and ask questions, one of the engineers kind of like started doing design work. And then he started giving me ideas for like product, and then started doing like some data analysis to see like the adoption of the product. And I'm like, how are you finding all this time? And he's like, well, because stories that used to take me like a week is now taking me like 3 days. So I have like some extra time. And he didn't have to learn product management. He would just go and ask ChatGPT, and it would say, oh, look at these numbers. And then he would just like go, because he can write SQL or whatever, like, do the analysis and then present it to me. And same thing with design. He would be like, oh, here's an image. How can we change it? And like AI would give you some ideas of like, oh, there's this like UX pattern that you should try.
Mhm.
Like make sure you have a consistent, like all of these UI UX patterns that a designer would tell you, he could just ask ChatGPT as he was building the product. And so what I saw was this like, if you see it as a Venn diagram of like, there's a circle of engineering, circle of product, and circle of design. And there's always been a little bit of overlap. And I was always like kind of in the middle because I could do all three. But there are very few people like that who are comfortable and love doing all three things.
Mhm.
But then now with AI, like these bubbles are like coming closer and closer to the extent that most of your team will be able to do all three. And
Mhm.
there'll be like very few people who go like, maybe I'm a AWS expert, and I don't care about UI UX or product stuff. Like just tell me
Back
what
in.
servers you want and I'll just do that work. So there'll be like these fringes where like people are like very specialized, but generally like everyone will become a generalist. And so with that mindset, I was like, I need to kind of like socialize this idea outside of just this one company. And so I started doing a little bit of coaching for leaders and stuff like that, where I took that same idea of what I saw in engineering, and then we applied it to sales. So in sales, what we saw was someone who has like never done B2B and was a junior sales rep can now, just with a few prompts and a little bit of coaching on how to use like leverage, and literally we never used one of those like sales tools that are available. We were just only use ChatGPT and use your brain to write these prompts. And so the only skill you really need to learn is prompt engineering. So when you learn that and you already have the functional knowledge, and a company is willing to like kind of give you full reins and like kind of go outside of your box
Mhm.
and then try other things, like we saw junior reps were able to not close, but close enough to closing a deal with major B2B clients, because they were able to kind of take care of like all of the initial back and forth. Like like, they know not to share pricing at what point. They know at what point they're getting disengaged. So like engaging them again. When it came to like content, instead of relying on a marketing team to, create like your drip campaigns,
Mhm.
like the salesperson, the junior sales rep, could like create it based on what the account or the person from the account was doing live. And so with all of these like hyper personalization, because you have a human being doing it, from a junior sales rep, you could get a lot more value. And so I saw that in sales. Then I also saw it in like HR, which my wife works with HR teams. And so her role is now like 180-degree different from what it was like 2 years ago. From her being like, because she works with SAP. And so her role used to be business comes to her, like, here's what I want to do. And then she would tell them, like, this is how you do it in SAP. She had a team who would actually do the implementation. So her role was like just this, take requirements, get it done, report back, maybe do some testing. To now, because with AI, she can go and actually become like a operation, like HR operations consultant to the HR team, because she can do analysis using AI of the data. And instead of taking orders that this is what we want to do, she can now recommend to them, hey, looks like, because I'm close to the data, you guys don't have time to analyze it, but I did the analysis. Here's what I think we should do. And like a recent example was, she looked at all the HR tickets that were open in the last 3 years, and their 30% of the tickets were in the other category. So
Hmm.
she took that other category. She they have allowed like Copilot within the company. So she used Copilot and asked it to break down this other into further groups. And then the groups that came up were like address change or benefits inquiries. So now that you know these two, three things, she's like, oh, by the way, SuccessFactors has this like feature that's coming out. I think we should implement that. And business didn't have to come to her. So now she's like kind of like expanded her role into both business and technical. So I think
Hmm.
this thing will happen almost in like every role, whether it's sales, marketing, or like HR, whatever have you. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm like helping leaders kind of rethink the way they should think about their team.
Yeah. It's almost like I think I'm not sure if it was at the Agent Force 2.0 kind of release, but this idea that everybody will be like have their own little HR office where they're leading their AI team, where every person will be enabled to say, here's the AI tool I use for maybe a little code generation. Here's the AI tool I use that's like,
Mhm.
is my wise uncle around, like medical information or around Salesforce release details or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
and everybody becomes that team of and they can grow that team or add to that team as they see fit based on their kind of preferences and their growth areas. I'm curious as you think about the dynamics inside of a business because younger people tend to be they tend to have less risk, they tend to be early adopters, and then management executives and others, right? Maybe they're a little more reticent to change. They're kind of like a little more wedded
Mhm.
to the status quo most of the time. We learn about this with both Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos talk about this idea of like how do you take a large organization and keep it agile, like I think Jeff Bezos calls it like day one thinking, like still keeping
Mhm.
that. But I'm curious, like what you observe and kind of how you're looking to help this dynamic between kind of the maybe the power dynamics are changing a little bit, and there's a little bit of
Mhm.
uncertainty in the market today.
Yeah, funny, I haven't watched that show, but I recently saw like a show named Z Suite, which the premise of the show is I guess it's the board of directors or whatever. They replace the C-suite with Gen Zers because
Okay.
they're like, oh, we're losing money. And now like I haven't seen the show, but the premise was interesting. But yeah, to answer your question, I think like AI is like, I kind of contrast AI with every other technology we've had in the past. And the contrast is every other technology in the past kind of made things more complicated. And so as a leader, you had to kind of step back and let someone else kind of do the actual work or like configuring the technology. And so we had this like IT team that takes care of something, or we had to hire a consultant that takes care of like the other thing. And so more and more, even though we use a lot of technology, we're kind of getting removed from how the technology actually works, right? Versus when it comes to AI, it's one of those things where the only skill you need is be able to communicate what's in your mind to the AI. And even that AI can help you with. So, like whether you're a leader or an IC, an individual contributor, if you think of like, oh, I need to learn so many things to learn AI because there are like 20 or 50 tools in your area which can help you, then yeah, it feels overwhelming. It feels like I don't know what to do. So I'd much rather like have the Gen Z kind of like take care of that stuff. Versus if you said, well, I want to know the capabilities of AI, which you can like, at least in people that I've coached, we can always distill it down to prompting. So if we work together in how you prompt, whether it's simple prompts like, a recipe for the evening and I have like these 5 things in my refrigerator, to all the way like let's brainstorm on this like really important strategic decision that we have to make. And like that spectrum, there are like so many different things in the middle that the reason why we don't do it is because we haven't tried it or no one has told us that that's possible. And so part of the like working with a coach, or like even if you're curious enough, like this is my regime. Like every morning, no matter like how my last day has been, I at least spend 1 hour thinking of new ways to prompt like different tools. So I try out Copilot, I try out OpenAI when DeepSeek came out. Like all of these tools that I'm trying, the only thing that's common between all of them is that I have to write prompts. And then it comes to my creativity of like, I'm not gonna use my preconceived notion of like in the past, the AI could not give me an answer for that, so I'm not going to try it again. So I have like a list of things that I've tried before, I've never worked, but I keep that list so I can retry it every time a new model comes out, anything else comes out. And so as a leader, if you think about it, the leader's job has always been communication, you know, communicating your vision and kind of socializing the strategy that you're thinking of. And so if you're already good at that, all you need to do is now try to communicate that to the AI and brainstorm with the AI. And so if you do that, then you can ask the AI to help you how to use the AI. You can ask the AI to help you find tools that are just being launched. You can ask the AI to compare 5 different tools that are out there. So it just becomes like such an interesting partner. And like when it comes to like the tools that I always recommend, always start with something chat, whether it's Claude or OpenAI. In most larger companies that I'm working with, they're only whitelisting Copilot right now. So if you have to fight with the management to get access, because I've had people who didn't have access because they said, oh, I asked once. They said, oh, they're slowly going to roll it out because it's part of IT team. And I said, well, IT team, of course, I don't own the company, so I can't tell them what to do. But I can tell you, like, if you ask them repeatedly, you will get access because it doesn't cost a lot. Worst case, you say, I'm going to pay myself, but get that access, and then try it every day. And one of the things you can do with chat, like any kind of chat model, is that more and more these models are coming out with features that kind of like are proactive, so like agentic. And so ChatGPT has this new one where you can just tell it to do something every day at a certain point.
Hmm.
And so most of my clients that I'm working with right now, I've told them like one of the prompts we need to give it is like, here's my job description, here's my LinkedIn profile, here's like the things that I'm interested in. Give that to it in a prompt and say every day send me at like 9 a.m., at like 2 p.m., and like 7 p.m. I want you to send me a very novel use case backed by an article in the whatever in the ether, um, that I can read and learn more about how to use AI in my field. And so things like these will be like you just set it and forget it. And it's kind of like I don't need to sign up for like someone's newsletter where I don't know if they're gonna like send things that are like super interesting to me. If I have like, because for me, if I want to be, kind of be adept with AI right now, I love product, I love engineering, I love business side of things. I also love woodworking. And so there are like 7 or 8 like newsletters I have to sign up to. And then I have to decide like which ones to read versus AI can do that job of like just go curate the knowledge from out there and then send me like bite-sized pieces every day. So as more of these like kind of agentic things come out, like I feel the number one thing you should use AI for right now is learning and upskilling. And so if you can do that, I think you're at a very good place, both for leaders and for ICs, but more importantly for leaders. Actually, one more nugget I'll tell you. What I'm seeing with ICs today is that, and when I say ICs, individual contributors, people who are not managers, essentially, um, they're using AI, but they're very scared of telling their leaders or their company that I'm using AI.
Mm.
And the fear comes from two places. One is compliance. They don't know what they're doing is allowed or not. So they don't want to be the first one to like kind of ask that question and then have that shut down.
Mhm.
The second reason they don't want to tell is they feel if I tell my manager or my leader that the task that you gave me that used to take like 3 days, I did it in like 5 hours, they're going to say, okay, here's another task, do that. Then there's another task, and then do that. So instead of being rewarded for this like productivity game, I will be like penalized. And so I think it's the leader's responsibility to flip that narrative and say, we're setting up incentive structures that not only allows people to come up and share their AI usage stories, but also like they feel encouraged and they feel like if I do this, I get this. And some people understand that even if their leaders are not there yet, even if you're an IC, if you go out there and show people that you're using AI, you have a clear path to leadership because soon companies are going to need leaders who understand AI more than leaders who just understand their functions.
Mhm.
And so if you're an IC, present yourself as the leader in using AI. Don't be shy. Like, fight the battles that you have to get your name out there in the company. And if you are a leader, try to create a culture and incentive structure that makes people come out of their shells and share with you the use cases they're already trying.
That's good because ultimately this is inevitable. This is where things are going. And if you're not doing it and welcoming it in your own business culture, your competitor is. And
Yeah,
so if you want the best for your own business and for your own long-term viability for your own team, then you have to give the people the demand of what they're looking for, which is going to require AI in order to deliver it. I mean, I think about a big competitive advantage in almost every marketplace today is that idea of kind of time to response. If I have someone's asking me a question, if they're engaging with me, time to response is huge. I mean, this was back, my first Dreamforce presentation was back in 2007 with Craig Swensrud, Brett Crosby. They became, this is the founder of Google Analytics, the CMO of Salesforce. Right? And we talked about your website, the hub of marketing, this idea that in 2007, people had the expectation that I need to be able to do my research in the middle of the night and be able to kind of advance what I'm doing. How much more so is the expectation today that I not only want to be able to research what I do, I want to actually make inroads and actually qualify you as a potential help for what I'm doing. And the AI agent ability to deliver that is going to be key, and customers are going to love it. Right.
right.
So if you're not doing it, your competitor's probably doing it. And so you
Mhm.
really gotta lead and put yourself in a position to how do I put capes on all my people and make it
Right.
free for them to try and fly around and use their special skills, right? And their new kind of superhero abilities, because that's how we're going to survive and thrive in this new marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, like another thing that kind of impedes their capability, and I love that metaphor of putting a cape on, is that like if there's a hole in the cape and that hole is, oh, IT owns AI right now. And so I think whatever function you're in, and I think both of us might have seen it, but especially like I noticed how when Salesforce kind of started becoming more and more popular, like in this company that I mentioned where I was doing consulting, most of our engagements came from sales leaders, not from IT. And like at least to the CEO of that company, it was a big departure from because he had done consulting for like other types of software in the past. And like this is the first time where we're actually pitching and getting deals done with sales managers, not with like IT or like VPs of like information technology or CIOs. And so I think we should see AI in the same way as like if you're in HR, take ownership of your AI rollout within your department, like whatever it takes, get the budget approvals so that like so you can identify people who have access. So the first thing is if you want someone to learn something, you have to make it easy for them. And so now if you say, I want you to use AI, but now I have to like submit a request and like justify my use of AI. And I helped one of my clients. The IT team said, give us like a business case of the I guess because he was a leader, like he had to do it for this entire team. But they wanted a business case of like 3-year payout ROI on the spend on AI that they're gonna do in this department. And I'm like, it's $50 per person license. And it's like a 7% team. Like you want me to create like a business case for this? Like the companies really need to think of it as like if it's under like $1,000 per person or whatever like that maybe, just go spend it on AI tools. Like the key is, of course, start with something like one chat model, but then give your people the, kind of freedom to try out if you're in sales, different sales tools. Like if Salesforce launches a new feature and it costs a little bit, like give your people the flexibility to like, yeah, we're gonna get that trial. Yeah, we're gonna do it like 6-month trial. And I'm pretty sure like Salesforce is gonna, if they haven't already, changed the way they price instead of like annual contract they might do for AI like usage based. And
Well, you can certainly
there are
just
tools out there.
you can do a single license. I mean, even if you're on an annual
Yeah.
base, you can do just a one, and that enables everybody to use the agents that's produced.
Yeah.
It's just the person who's building the agent is that one license, you know? So there's a
Yeah.
way to do it. It's really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, like kind of talk to your IT teams and figure out how can we make it easy for people to use AI, at least for your own department, if not for the entire company.
And this is great. So as we think about kind of winding this down, I'm just curious, right? Like you're in the marketplace, you're here to help people onboard to AI. I mean, I think in our initial conversation, what I loved about hearing from you is that, thinking about many executives nowadays, right? Both within and outside the Salesforce world, they feel overwhelmed by both what they're seeing in the marketplace, the potential impact on their business, and then all of the potential conversations and maybe latent demand, covert
Mhm.
happenings that are going on in their own organizations as it relates to AI. And so, like specifically, what would you recommend as a next step for someone who wants to get some assistance related to that?
Yeah, so in terms of like reaching out to me, I'm on LinkedIn and very responsive usually, so just reach out there.
Yeah, we'll put
I'm
the URL in the show notes, right? So people can
for
follow
sure.
up with you. Um,
Yeah. And then I'm also building a product called Good Prompt, which I've seen it for myself. Like I said, the most important skill is prompting. And so people are saving their prompts in like notes or Google Docs or whatever have you. And then that becomes another, how do I share it with people and stuff like that. So Good Prompt is a product that I'm building, which allows you to, if you write a well-written prompt, you can create the prompt and kind of turn it into a repository of all the prompts that you're using for your job function, and it makes it easy for you to share with other people. You can bookmark other people's prompts. Like I said, my regime is every morning I write prompts. So all of the prompts that I write, I kind of like open source it in that product. So there's tons of prompts out there already that you can just search and bookmark. I also have a nifty tool there called the prompt generator, where if you type in like, I want to write a blog post, it will turn that one line prompt, which generally doesn't work well, to a more detailed prompt where it goes, act like a blog writer that writes SEO
Mhm.
friendly text and like and goes into what are the bullet points you want. And then you can tweak that the AI generated prompt and then use that prompt yourself. So it's kind of like meta prompting,
Mhm.
if you will, and then you can save that in the product as well. So try out Good Prompt. So GUDPROMPT.com because I
Yeah.
couldn't get
That's
GOOD.
amazing. And what I love about that is, you know, um, we tend to focus on people first concerns, and that's essentially like why I'm really happy about the conversation here. We'll probably do a future episode on good prompt as well, just to talk through as we get more detailed examples. But inside your prompt engineering, there are significant people first concerns, right? There's the persona aspect of what reasoning context I want the AI to kind of take on, as well as what kind of output do I want? Do I want it in, sixth grader language? Do I want it
Right,
in song lyrics? Do I want it in a
right,
poem? Do I want to avoid this type of terms or that type of terms? Do I want to ignore this content versus that content? Do I want
right.
it in this language? There's a tremendous amount of people first dimension in prompt engineering that I want to go a lot deeper into, because as people dig into these tools, it's very important that those same dynamics that we think about our human to human conversation really still need to be present in everything that we produce out of AI to maintain that perception and interpretation that this is still an empathetic human conversation that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time today, Pranay. It's been great.
Yeah, it was great, John, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Salesforce Trails and Trials. If you found this episode valuable, we would love your help reaching others. Please subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and share this with another who would benefit.